Hey guys, welcome back to Fix It TV, and we're here for another video for the Interbellum private Warhammer server that will be launching at some point soon. Today we're going to look a little bit at the stats and how things are going to change. We have some things that are going to work a little bit differently. We have some things that have been renamed. And before we go on, let me just say that these things are still under development. Some things may change from what we're going to say today. And if I say something wrong because I'm explaining this to the best of my ability, feel free to correct me in the comments below. All right, let's start with the secondary stats. Now, let me just say straight ahead that secondary stats, you're going to have 0. That's how you start. Secondary stats will be gained via your gear and only through your gear. Health, as we know, if it goes to 0, you die. However, you start at 6,000. And from what I heard, it's going to be the maximum is going to be 10,000, which means pretty much everybody might have just 10,000 HP, but we'll see if that's going to stick. Power, increase the base value of your abilities. It's been a standard in many games, but here we're going to have melee attack power, range attack power, spell power, and restoration instead of healing power. We're going to restoration. This is a rename there. Critical hit rating, we have it's the chance to critically hit an enemy, of course, but here we're going to have different numbers because the critical rating is going to be 0.01% per point, which means we're probably looking at having something like 3,000, 4,000 rating, which we're going to have to get used to that. Hardiness is a rename again. It's the anti-crit, if you like. Reduces enemy critical hit rating down to a minimum of 0. So we can take the enemy's chance to crit to 0. However, potency, it's the amount of critical damage that you can deal. It starts at 25% as base damage, and from there you can increase it. The important thing here to note is that the previous versions of the game, critical chance was, if I remember correctly, a random number between 60 to 80%. Here we have more standard numbers, which probably will help to create better builds, knowing the numbers and without doing random things. So base 25, you can increase it by getting more potency into your gear. And fortitude is going to be reducing the potency, which means with fortitude you can reduce the amount of critical damage that you can get. However, you can't get it to 0. You can only take it down to a minimum of 10%. So if someone has critical hit rating, it will always, well, depending on the chances, will crit you. There will always be some substantial damage up to a minimum of 10%. You can't get that to 0. Dodge is changing completely on this server. Is the chance to avoid all effects of any ability with, again, the rating of 1 equals 0.01% dodge chance. What is changing here is that dodge in the previous versions, you could dodge the ranged attacks in the 360 around you. Now, on this new server, dodge only applies in front of you. The same that parry was or block was. You can only dodge something if it's coming from in front of you. So someone running sideways or running backwards will not be able to dodge arrows, grenades, bullets, anything that comes along their way. Block is your chance to reduce the damage of an incoming ability by doubling your armor and resistances against it, with a rating again of 0.01% chance with a base of 5. So we don't start at 0, we start at 5%. One thing we have to note here, which is on the second paragraph here, where I put it, is that accuracy reduces enemy dodge and block to a minimum of 0. So you can remove entirely the block and dodge. This is a little bit of a worry how tanks actually is going to work with this. If you can actually reduce it down to 0, maybe we won't have those unkillable tanks anymore. I don't know. Also, negative accuracy increases enemy dodge, which means it does say you can get it up to a minimum of 0, but how are you going to have negative ones? If the minimum is 0, negative increases your enemy's dodge chances. This is not very clear to me, but we will see. However, what is absolutely clear is that you can only dodge and block attacks made in front of you, and block does not require a shield, which means it becoming a generic ability. By doubling your armor, you can block. So not only tanks will have that ability, but everyone, allowing possibly for more defensive builds in all classes if you can stack the armor up, and we'll see how that's going to actually work. And it's an interesting mechanism that every class will have block and dodge, and it's only from the front. I suppose maybe that is the point here. Critical hits and percentage hit calculation are no longer split by the type of attack. So normally crit, range crit, or whatever, there's crit in general. Depending what you have, you crit or you don't crit. It's not split there. I suppose that will also affect performance. Doesn't have to do a lot of calculations and so on and so forth. Resistance reduces all damage against that type of damage that there are. We had different types of damage before. Now we have 6 types of damage, which is piercing, impact, incore, corporeal, elemental, and spiritual. Corporeal, elemental, and spiritual we had before. The 3 new names, we'll see what they correspond to, is piercing, impact, and incore. We'll see how that's gonna work. Armor adds to your resistance against all direct damage. Armor has no effect against the indirect damage. I mean, dots are not affected by the armor. Penetration, I suppose that is the old weapon skill kind of thing. Reduces enemy piercing, impact, and incore resistance. And sagacity reduces enemy corporeal, elemental, and spiritual resistance. So we have 2 different debuffers. There are penetration for armor and sagacity for spellcasters. Moving on to the action points, which base is going to be 250. Originally it was 200, then some other versions went to 250 as well. On this server it will be 250. The AP cost, how much the abilities cost. AP regen is the amount of action points you gain. However, the base amount of action point regeneration in this server will be 0. This means you do not regenerate action points if you're naked. That will come from what I know from the gear you're going to be acquiring in the game. So if you're naked, it's 0. If you're wearing some gear, you're still going to start building it. Adrenaline is the new term for morale. It's the currency, the equivalent of action points for the morale, which has a base of 4 per second. And it can go to a minus 36 or a maximum of 36, which means we're going to have abilities that possibly buff the known morale or adrenaline gauge, or reducing it. HP 4, I don't know why they call it HP 4, not regeneration. It's the wounds per second, which is 4 per second, what we have already. This one, as before, is not affected by any healing modifiers, so you cannot use a healing debuff to reduce that. And when you're not in combat, is increased by 500%. Base value is 240. Pushback immunity, if you're casting, it gives you immunity to be pushed back if you have a long cast, like 2 seconds, 250, maybe a Sork or a Bright Wizard. Cast time, the amount of time it takes to cast something. Mass is something we're going to talk a little bit later on this video, so stay with me. Affects crowd control durations. There's a whole new thing coming down to crowd control, which we'll see a little bit later. Outgoing damage, the damage that you do. Incoming, damage reduction reduces enemy damage done to you with a base of 100%. And outgoing healing. Now let's clarify 2 things here: outgoing healing and healing received. Outgoing healing, increasing all the healing that you do, including yourself, right, does not apply to life taps and absorbs. So shamans and archmages may have a bit of an issue there. And healing received increases all healing you receive from sources you do not control. Which means if you're a healer, you can put a lot of points on outgoing healing and at the same time a healing received, because you're only going to be using the outgoing healing, because that affects you as well, how much you heal. But that one, healing received will be something a DPS will have, or a tank, in order to receive a lot more healing from the healer. Also, healing received does not apply to life taps or absorbs. Life taps have been a scourge in some versions some years back, making those classes that can use that almost immortal. It's nice to see that that is being looked after. All right, let's go have a look at the primary stats now, guys. A lot of things change on the primary stats. Again, we're going to have strength for the melee, ballistic for the range, intelligence for the spellcasting. But strength will give you 2 melee attack power, 1 range attack power, and 1 spell attack power and 0.032% potency. Ballistic is going to give you 1 melee attack power, 2 range, and 1 spell and accuracy. And intelligence is going to give you melee, 1 point range, and 2 spell casting. The reason for this is, as we mentioned on the previous video that we did for Interbellum, your gear is going to have randomized statistics on it. So in order for you not to throw away something that has ballistic, and the example was that the Slayer will be able to use ballistic, this is the reason, because it won't give you the same as strength 2 melee attack power, but will give you 1. You can still use it at a reduced capacity, of course, but at least you have something to wear if it has some other perk that you might want to have until you find a much better item. Also, some of the other statistics are changing massively, such as toughness, where toughness will give you hardiness, which reduces the chance to be critically hit. It also gives you fortitude, which reduces the amount of damage on critical hits. It will give you armor. Don't forget, doubling your armor gives you block. And HP per 4 seconds is going to be at 0.75. So toughness is mainly now not reducing incoming damage from everything, but it's specifically anti-crit damage and increasing your block and regeneration. Wounds is down to 4 health per point instead of 1 point equals 10 as the previous versions. Weapon skill, we can see here it has penetration, pushback immunity, 2 piercing resistance, and 2 corporeal. So we see that the statistics now are not only going to give you, like before, for example, weapon skill, parry, and armor penetration, also starting to give you resistances, which means some classes will specialize in some types of resistance, and we need to see what type of damage some of the classes will be doing. Willpower gives you sagacity, restoration power, impact resistance, spiritual resistance. I'm assuming impact is going to be melee, and spiritual, maybe it's a spell casting, but we'll see what class, maybe chosen, or if they change what type of damage some of the classes will do. I don't know that yet. Initiative will give you maximum action point increase. So assuming you can go above 250, which is very interesting. It will increase your healing received and give you Igor and elemental resistance. So initiative, I'm hoping you can still detect hidden units via initiative. But this is how they released it. But I do like the fact that you can increase your action points and your healing received. So now a tank probably will need initiative, toughness, wounds, of course, and we'll see what else. And agility is 3 dodge per rating and 0.03 AP regen. Ooh, that might be, I mean, from what I see here, the build is going to be very interesting. We're going to have to do a lot of math, get the right statistic here, and we'll see where it goes from there. So far, the things on the stats look interesting. I hope these guys did their math and the preparation to make it work properly, because this is very refreshing, it's new and exciting. Crowd control is essential in any PvP game and allows you to control your enemies, give you the advantage. The Interbellum server is going to have a few differences here, and we're going to see them right now. The most important one is mass. Mass is a stat that adjusts crowd control durations. Minimum value is 0, maximum is 8, and a base value of 4. That means that now we can specialize in increasing the duration of our control or reduce it on the enemies that are doing it on us. Mass is a stat that will not be found on gear. It will not be found on gear and is controlled entirely by abilities, passive, and tactics. So we're going to have to sacrifice a few things for that. It is very important, the crowd control, so it's worth sacrificing something for this. This will bring a new fresh air on PvP. Disarm, of course, prevents your regen skills 5 seconds as before, and snare reduces your movement speed by 30. The duration is equal to 16 minus 2 times target's mass. So with mass, we'll be able to reduce it or increase it. So if you don't like being controlled all the time, mass is your way out of it. It's no longer a standard. Knockbacks push the enemy away from you. The pushbacks always had a fun and interesting role, especially in some keep fights. You can push people off, push them off cliffs, off the walls. Now there is something new coming into that as well. Distance is variable by height, So these values will be assuming flat ground that we're going to see here. So it's 60 feet plus 10 times caster's mass minus target's mass. Mass is coming into this again, and on the flat ground it will be a standard of 60 feet, I'm assuming, for everyone. And from there, depending how much mass you put, you can increase your punch size and your knockback. I don't see anywhere on the CC punch, so I'm assuming knockback includes punch and knockbacks, because there were two different categories in the previous versions. But the fact that you can increase the range or reduce it as a defender is something fun, because some people will increase it specifically, let's say for some keeps, that the main door on the lord is on the top floor, or the first floor if you like, and they can punch people even further, increasing the time they need to get back. It's gonna work, I think, in a funny way. We'll see. Knockdown prevents all control of your character. Duration is equal to 3 seconds. I'm assuming that's seconds when it says 3, plus caster's mass minus target's mass. Again, knockdowns, witch elves, witch hunters, marauders, lions, all that's going to be, could be 3 seconds, it could be less. And especially for some classes, if they keep the tactics as they are. For example, engineer that has 50% reduction of knockdown as a tactic, plus mass, it could go down to, from, instead of 3 seconds, tactic will make it 1.5, mass could make it 1 or half a second, or something like that. Pool effects. As you know, personally, I am not a great fan of pools, although they're really fun, especially on the engineer. They always have been broken. Choppers, engineers, manguses, marauders, they've all been pulling through walls, through ceilings, through objects, rails, bars, you know, you name it, they've done it, through the floor, anything. So I am really looking forward to see what they've done with this problem, because it's a massive problem. In the previous versions of Warhammer, people have requested in numerous occasions, including myself, to be totally removed from the game until this problem can be solved. I don't know, I will ask and get back to you on this, what they've done with this. But pull effects bring the enemy next to you. They are not dodged. So the engineer used to be dodged and the magus used to be resisted. Now they are not dodged, but their success rate is based on mass. There we go again, mass is in everything. Success rate is 15%, which is fairly low, times 4, well, that would make it 60%, plus caster mass minus target's mass. So that plus the times 4, it's about 60% chance to be pulled, and then you can drop it a little bit or increase it depending on your mass. Rooted prevents your character from moving for 5 seconds. Silence prevents your character from using spells for 5 seconds. And Stagger prevents all control of your character for the duration being hit by an enemy ability and removes the effect. Duration is equal to 9 minus target's mass. This is crowd control continues, and we go to the immunity system. There will be an immunity system that will be applied when you are CC'd, and there will be 4 categories instead of 2 in the previous versions. Momentum prevents the application of an ensnare for 8 seconds. This is a massive change, because this means you cannot be slowed permanently anymore. There will be an 8-second immunity, so you can move around, flee, or do whatever else you want on the kiting part as a melee or a range. 8 seconds of immunity on slow. Immovable is for rooted pulls and knockback for 20 seconds. Inevitable, it's for disarm and silence for 20 seconds. And unstoppable, it's the immunity for knockdown and stagger for 30 seconds. So not everything is flat. We get 8 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. I'm assuming knockdowns and staggers will have a longer duration, so that's why the timer is a little bit higher than the others. In addition, there will be pocket items that can remove ensnare, disarm, silence, and root it. As far as I know, there will be 2 pocket items, not 1, but we'll see what the other one is going to be doing. And please note that you cannot remove knockdown and stagger because of how they function. Also, some classes and archetypes have ways out of specific types of CC. We'll see what that means. I'm assuming is the normal skills we had before. I hope you guys find this information useful for the future when the server is going to be released. I hope I explained everything in a level for new players and not too much for older players that know what's happening. If you like the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave some comments below. Correct me if I made any mistakes. And I'll see you in the next video, because we have a lot more information coming in your way.